All right, get ready because today we're going deep on the lost city of Atlantis. We've got this video. It's making some pretty wild claims, and honestly, it makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
we've got history all wrong.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting how this theory tries to tie together, well, ancient philosophy with, modern satellite pictures. We're talking about Plato, the Eye of the Sahara. It's kind of a wild ride.
So Plato, he's like the original source for everything about Atlantis, right?
Yeah, exactly. And his account, it reads like some big budget action movie. Like you've got this advanced civilization, they've got tech that's way ahead of their time, city layout that's just incredible, and then boom, total destruction. It's this mix of history and myth that's just kept people guessing for, centuries.
Yeah, so uh, where does this Eye of the Sahara thing, where does that fit into all of this? I mean, last time I checked, the Sahara Desert wasn't exactly known for its, big cities.
Right, and that's where things get really interesting. So picture this. You've got this massive circle right in the middle of the desert, big enough to see it from space. And it's got these rings, these concentric rings that they look a lot like what Plato described for Atlantis. And get this, it wasn't even discovered until like the 1960s. What a hidden gem, right?
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to picture it, and I got to admit, it is kind of freaky how well it lines up with, what Plato said. But I mean, is it just a coincidence? Or could there be something more here?
Well, you might want to hold on to your hat because the coincidences, they don't stop there. I mean, the eye's diameter, it's almost exactly what Plato said Atlantis was supposed to be. And then there's the location. It's in Mauritania, right on the edge of Africa.
Okay, so the Pillars of Hercules, the gateway to the Atlantic. So if you, I don't know, imagine Africa being a bit smaller back then.
Right.
Mauritania could be like, I don't know, beyond the Pillars.
Exactly. And there's more. Plato talked about Atlantis having all these precious metals, tons of gold, silver, iron, that kind of stuff. And guess what Mauritania's got a lot of?
Wait, are you telling me there's like a real-life El Dorado in the Sahara? I mean, come on, that's almost too perfect.
Right, and it gets even crazier. So local legends in Mauritania, they talk about their first king. And get this, his name was, wait for it, Atlas.
Atlas.
Yeah.
Like the guy who holds up the world, Atlas. Someone's got to be messing with us, right?
I know, right? It gets weirder, though. So there's this ancient Greek historian, Herodotus. He marked a spot on his map, and he called it Atlantis. You'll never guess where it is. Right near the Eye of the Sahara.
Okay, now I'm officially freaked out. I mean, Plato's description, the measurements matching up perfectly. The location, all those resources, the king named Atlas.
Yeah.
And then a map that basically points right to it. Are we actually onto something here?
It is definitely a lot to process. But before we get ahead of ourselves, before we, declare that we found Atlantis and start planning our trips, there is, well, let's just say there's a pretty big elephant in the room.
Oh, yeah. I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Sea levels, right. If the Eye of the Sahara was supposed to be some island city, I mean, the water would have to have been way higher than it is now.
Exactly. We're talking hundreds of meters difference. The problem is, around the time Atlantis was supposed to exist, sea levels were actually lower than they are today.
It's a bit of a head-scratcher, right?
Way. So that's it then. End of the Atlantis theory.
Well, not so fast. This video we're looking at, it has a pretty interesting twist. What if we've been misinterpreting Plato this whole time? I mean, he never actually said Atlantis sank. He just said it became unreachable by ships.
Unreachable by ship. So maybe it wasn't that the city sank, but that, I don't know. What if something caused the land to rise, like way up? Some massive geological event, like, I don't know, an earthquake on steroids, something that could push the Eye of the Sahara upward and make it, well, totally inaccessible from the sea.
Okay, so maybe Atlantis didn't sink? Maybe it did like a reverse Atlantis, like it shot up from the seafloor. Now that's a twist.
It is, isn't it? And to make things even more interesting, there's evidence at the Eye of the Sahara, evidence that suggests there was a ton of water there at some point and that, well, there might have been some major tectonic uplift. It's like the pieces of this giant ancient puzzle. They're starting to fit together.
Okay, so my brain is like doing backflips right now, trying to, I don't know, wrap itself around this whole Atlantis rising from the sea thing. It's kind of mind-blowing. But
Yeah.
before we get too carried away, you mentioned an elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
We can't just ignore the skeptics, can we?
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get swept up in all the excitement, especially when you've got, I don't know, a mystery like Atlantis. But you got to approach these theories with a healthy dose of skepticism,
Right. Okay. So let's put on our skeptic hats for a minute. What are like some of the counter arguments?
Yeah.
What are people saying against this whole Eye of the Sahara being Atlantis thing?
Well, for starters, there's the whole issue of physical evidence. Sure, the eye's shape and location, they're pretty compelling. But so far, I mean, nobody's found anything definitive. No archaeological digs that really prove there was ever, a city there or any kind of advanced civilization in that area.
But what about all that gold and silver and iron in Mauritania? The video made a big deal about how you know, that lines up with what Plato said about Atlantis being so rich in resources.
True, but just because things line up, it doesn't mean they're connected. I mean, you find valuable stuff in lots of places around the world. It doesn't automatically mean there was some super advanced civilization there before.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. But what about those legends? The ones about a king named Atlas. I mean, come on, that's going to count for something, right?
It's definitely an intriguing coincidence, I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be careful about taking oral traditions as, literal historical fact. Those legends and myths, they change over time. They get embellished, details get mixed up. It's like a giant game of telephone, only it's with history.
So you're saying we can't just assume that a king named Atlas automatically means that it's connected to Atlantis.
Exactly. It's entirely possible the story of King Atlas has nothing to do with the Atlantis myth, or maybe the myth itself influenced the legend. We need more than just a name to make a solid connection.
Right. Okay, so we got to take those legends with, I don't know, a grain of salt. What about the map, though? The one by Herodotus, you mentioned it earlier, the one with Atlantis marked right near the Eye of the Sahara.
Ah, yes, Herodotus. He was a fascinating character. I mean, he was quite the storyteller, loved collecting tales from his travels, but he wasn't always the best at, fact-checking.
Wait, so you're saying we can't necessarily trust his map?
Let's just say. Herodotus was more interested in a good story than in, perfect accuracy. It's totally possible he just wrote down something he heard without really checking if it was true or not.
Okay, so we've got a map that might not be reliable. Some legends that could be more fiction than fact. And, well, no real archaeological proof. Anything else we should be skeptical about?
Well, let's go back to that elephant in the room, the whole sea level thing. Even if we say, okay, maybe Plato was being metaphorical, maybe Atlantis didn't sink, maybe it rose up, we still got to explain how that happened. How a whole landmass could just, I don't know, get pushed upward hundreds of meters.
Yeah. You'd think something that big would leave some kind of trace, right?
Exactly. And to be fair to the skeptics, those traces haven't been found yet, at least not in a way that really supports this whole Atlantis rising idea.
So basically, we're back to needing more evidence.
Pretty much. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as they say. And while the Atlantis theory is exciting, it's still, I don't know, it relies a lot on interpretation and speculation. We need more concrete data to back it up.
But couldn't you say that the evidence is out there somewhere, just, waiting to be discovered? What if we just haven't looked in the right places yet?
That's the cool thing about archaeology and history. There's always the possibility of finding something that, totally changes how we understand the past. Who knows? Maybe someday we'll find proof of Atlantis. Or maybe we'll find something even more mind-blowing.
Okay, yeah. I like that. But for now, it sounds like we need to, I don't know, maybe mix our Atlantis excitement with a little bit of reality.
Right. It's important to keep an open mind. But you also got to be critical and, really look at the evidence. It's about finding that balance between being curious and being skeptical.
Yeah. Where does that leave us with this whole Eye of the Sahara thing? Is it just a cool geological quirk? Or it could be something more?
That's the big question, isn't it? Even if the eye is in Atlantis, it's still there. It still has that unique shape. It's still in that specific location. It needs an explanation.
Yeah. It's like this giant bullseye in the middle of the desert, just daring us to figure out how it got there. I mean, scientists have some theories, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One theory is that the eye is actually like a dome-shaped structure that's been eroded over millions of years. So it's revealing these layers of rock, these concentric layers. Another idea is that it's a collapsed volcanic caldera, although there's no real evidence of volcanic activity in the area.
So lots of erosion, maybe a little bit of volcanic drama, basically Mother Nature showing off her artistic skills.
Yeah, you could say that. But even with all these theories, the Eye of the Sahara is still kind of a mystery. It's a geological enigma that keeps sparking debate and inspiring, a sense of wonder.
It's a reminder that there are still mysteries out there, mysteries that are just waiting to be solved. And who knows, maybe someday we'll have the technology or the knowledge to, I don't know, to finally crack the code of the Eye of the Sahara and really figure out its secrets.
That's the exciting part of science, the endless possibilities for discovery.
Well said. It's been quite a deep dive today. We've gone from ancient myths to satellite images, from geological theories to, well, the importance of thinking critically. So, as our listeners contemplate the mysteries of Atlantis and the Eye of the Sahara, what's the takeaway here?
I think the big takeaway is that, you know, the pursuit of knowledge, it's a journey. It's full of twists and turns. You might start with one theory, then you find evidence that challenges that theory, and you end up somewhere completely different, and that's okay. The process of questioning, exploring, and, rethinking what we think we know, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
It's about embracing the mystery.
Yep.
Even if we never find a definitive answer.
Exactly. And with the Eye of the Sahara, even if it's not the remains of some lost city, it's still a pretty amazing example of the power of nature. And, well, the enduring allure of the unknown.
Okay, so we've talked about, the arguments for and against Atlantis, and we've said that the Eye of the Sahara, it's a pretty amazing geological thing, even on its own. But there's this one question, it's been bugging me, let's just say, for a minute, that the Eye of the Sahara, it's not Atlantis. Then what are we left with? Why does it look the way it does? And why does it seem to, I don't know, match up so well with what Plato described?
That's a really good question. And it shows that even if we, debunk one theory, we still have to deal with the evidence, right? The stuff that made people think of that theory in the first place. The Eye of the Sahara, it doesn't just vanish if we decide it's not Atlantis. It's still there,
Right.
in the middle of the desert. It's asking us to explain it.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, are there any other explanations? Something that could explain why the eye looks so much like Plato's Atlantis. Is it possible that Plato was describing, I don't know, something real, even if it wasn't some super advanced civilization?
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. One idea is that maybe Plato based his Atlantis story on a real place. But he might have exaggerated some of the details. I mean, he was a philosopher, not a, reporter.
Well, maybe he took a little piece of truth, a real place that had some of the things he described, and then, I don't know, he turned it into this epic story about a powerful civilization that destroyed itself.
Exactly. He could have been using Atlantis as this,
Yeah.
metaphor for how empires work, how they rise and fall, how power changes hands. The idea that nothing lasts forever. It's a theme you see all through history.
That makes a lot of sense. It explains how there could be these real-world connections to Plato's Atlantis without actually needing, a civilization that was more advanced than anything we know about.
Exactly. It lets us appreciate Plato's story while still being realistic about the evidence.
Okay, so where does that leave us? What should our listeners take away from all of this whole deep dive into Atlantis and the Eye of the Sahara?
I think the most important thing to remember is that learning and discovering, it's a journey. There are going to be twists and turns. You might start with one idea, one theory, and then you find evidence that makes you question that theory, and you end up somewhere totally different. That's just part of the process. Questioning things, exploring, being willing to change your mind, that's what makes it all so interesting.
It's about, I don't know, being okay with the mystery, even if we never find a perfect answer.
Exactly. And with the Eye of the Sahara, even if it turns out to not be some ancient lost city, it's still pretty amazing. It's a reminder of how powerful nature is and how much there still is out there that we don't understand.
Well said. And who knows, maybe someday someone will find something that finally explains it all. Until then, we can just look at the Eye of the Sahara and wonder.
Absolutely. There's something kind of magical about a mystery like that, something that keeps people fascinated for centuries.
All right, everyone. Looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive. We've explored some pretty wild theories. We've looked at the evidence, or the lack of it, and hopefully we've made you a little more curious about, well, the mysteries of our planet.
If you're feeling inspired, go check out the Eye of the Sahara on Google Earth. Take a virtual tour, see what you think. What questions pop up for you? What conclusions do you come to?
And hey, if you find anything groundbreaking, anything that proved or disproves the whole Atlantis thing, let us know. We'd love to dive back into this with you.
Until then, stay curious. Keep those imaginations going. There's a whole world of mysteries out there waiting to be discovered.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode.